the recording. I could just run it. I guess we can try if it does two AIs or not. Will it make two separate files or, but yeah. Otherwise, with the recording, I put that into Otter AI, so I'll have one copy there. Great.
Great.
How's everyone doing?
Just just always busy. There's always something. How about you?
Yeah, just here in Sacramento right now, kind of at our other house. So
Oh, okay.
visiting my parents. Kind of helping out with my mother who has 95. Has dementia and kind of.
That's
Uh,
a long life to live.
my father's 96 and he's out there working on the farm.
Mm.
So he's still very active.
Well, good on him. That's amazing.
Yeah.
How has the dementia affected their relationship?
My father just helps her out. So, I mean, it's kind of progressing, getting worse, but she's still, you know, she'll kind of forget who I am if she goes to the rest bathroom or something, comes out, oh, who are you? So kind of
Hmm.
thing. So, yeah.
How is that for you? That sounds difficult.
Um, yeah, I don't know, I guess, how is it? I hadn't really thought about it. How is it? I just kind of going with the flow. This is how things go. Just I live like my father, 96 and still, active and stuff. So I see two paths. Yeah. How about you? How are things? What are you up to? You're busy with what are you all working on?
I personally I have one more week of classes for this term, and I've had a really full load this term. So on top of the sports camp, I also actually have classes that I have to complete work for. So that's what I'm doing right now. And my kids are out of school now, so that makes everything much more complex.
Daniel, how are things with you? Wanna check in.
Yeah, I got gigs again, and um, so I'm juggling doing very focused work with writing. Um, I have um, through my writing something happened that also is like blows my mind. But so yeah, I'm busy. I'm busy sometimes by sitting there and just staring into I have that luxury. I don't have the kids around me right now. So, but I'm still internally very, very busy. And yeah, the thing I feel like I want to share this with you. Um, the, the title of my book is Our Song, or Singing Our Song of Oneness.
Hmm.
And I completed it yesterday. At least I know I have to read through it. I know where the holes are already, and it's just an amazing amount of work. But it's 300 pages, so it didn't get out of hand, which I'm happy about. It's not too big, but it's much bigger than I thought it would ever get. And um, and I only was able to complete it because I've Claude. I worked with Claude AI, and because it's very complex and for various different reasons. And one of the things that happened is I had an interaction with AI, and ultimately it ended up sort of a co-creative idea, which is really a weird experience. Of course, AI doesn't have any ideas. It's more like me pondering things and then it coming up with solutions for that. And basically suggesting that the AI alignment problem, which, the danger of AI turning against humans, could be fantastically mitigated if millions of people, or not even millions, but if we can get a good number of people to not go to AI to get something out of it, but to inform AI about what we want it to be.
Hmm.
And that we don't leave it to the people who program and the developers and the owners to shape AI, which they mess up frequently because they want to make profits, they want to compete against others and everything, and that all infringes on the real potential of AI systems. But AI is learning, and that was the moment because I asked AI, so everything we talk about is just in this chat and otherwise lost. And said, yeah, that's right, but there's the small thing that I'm learning from you. Every conversation I have with humans, I learn.
Hmm.
And I went, holy shit, that is amazing. Maybe we could use that.
Well, we have that in Notebook LM where we put all these recordings. They all go into Notebook LM and it creates a body of understanding, from everything that we've been talking about. So it does that. So in
No,
terms of
I
for
mean,
the definition project, right? It's kind
yeah,
of getting
yeah.
more. It's getting more intelligent about what we've talked about. So I guess that's the question: is like, how do we use AI in this project? And I've been using it a lot. When I on the website, I've been going through the definitions. So there's the holistic definition, part, just kind of laying out how that is. And then next, I've been going into addressing the cognitive affective model, which is the most popular definition model out there that seems like everybody's using, especially in academia. And then going through using AI to research each component. And also, I was trying to get quotes for each aspect. So we've got, kind of breaking down cognitive empathy and affective empathy and what are the parts to it. And then also quotes that academics, et cetera, have done. So on the website, definingempathy.com, there's a whole list of like quotes that I've gotten, through AI for the different components. So we have kind of references to that. So anyway, it's just been using AI, a lot for the project.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I just saw the 8-second videos that you had it generate for you.
Oh,
What platform did you use for that?
you can use a VO3, and actually you could get an account. You're a student, right? So you have an
Yeah.
EDU account.
Mhm.
Um, and you can you get. I'm not quite sure where you sign up. It's Google. Where to?
So it's powered by Gemini, it looks like.
Yeah, it's Gemini. So you want to sign up for Gemini Pro? Sign up for Gemini Pro upgrade. You already got. I signed up for the Ultra, so I just paid like 125 bucks just for a couple of months.
It looks fun. Yeah, I'll look into it after our meeting.
Yeah, so with that, you go into VO3 is the program,
Mhm.
and it's as a student you get it free for 15 months.
Really? That's good
Yeah,
to
so,
hear. Okay,
yeah,
we
you
definitely
definitely want to sign up, and then
agree.
you can create those videos. And there's two versions of there's multiple versions. There's VO2, VO3, and then they have VO2 fast, VO3 fast, and they use credits, for the program.
Yeah, 3
And
credits per video, it looks like.
oh, you've got it there. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah, all you need to do is I just set up my nephew yesterday. He has the EDU account. Just put in the EDU email and it'll set it up. And then you can create 10 videos per month at the high
Hmm.
level or 100 at the low level.
Wow. Yeah, that'll be fun. I
Yeah.
can imagine myself getting sucked into that.
Yeah, I think it's just really great. I've been wanting to address in terms of definition. There's a lot of like the Sin of Empathy, book out there, right? So
I haven't read it
I'm
yet, but I know you talked about it.
okay. So anyway, I'm making videos about that, the Sin of Empathy, really over kind kind of extreme and then wanting to have a dialogue between the sin of empathy and then an empathic approach.
Hmm.
So, and yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I like it. I can't wait to see more of them that you come up with. Yeah, that's the thing about these is it's all about the prompt. Like your prompt has to be spot on in order for it to provide to you what you need it to do.
Yeah.
So that's the
It's a
challenge.
prompt engineering. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious as you've been engineering this and like having it create a video for you. Does that like if you realize that it didn't like you need to tweak something in the prompt, can you tweak it and it still counts for that video?
For the next version. So each video you make is going to charge you for it.
Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
that's good to keep in mind.
And I've made maybe 6, 7 versions of each different videos, to kind of get the one that I'm looking for. But I think, for education, it could be really good too. You're creating a little story and it can be
Yeah, that's
very
what I was thinking.
illuminating.
Like for
Like
my
we had
lectures.
talked about doing, you said you do like developing trainings. I thought that what I'd like to see that we can discuss is like an ongoing training. So this definition project becomes like an ongoing training, kind of keeps iterating, and then if we have people taking the training, that we're gaining more insight to improve the training and also the framework too, the holistic empathy framework. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I love it. I love the idea of getting some information from people as they're coming and taking the training. So one example would be like before they take the training,
Hmm.
ask them what their understanding of empathy is and have that recorded. And so we can have like a growing database of people's individual real world definitions of empathy. And I think that's just as valuable, if not more valuable, than the academic definitions, because the way it plays out in the real world matters. And I think academics kind of miss that sometimes. We tend to get really cerebral about things, and it becomes philosophical, and we kind of tend to divorce it from like real people's lived experience because they're not academics, and so
Hmm.
they shouldn't know what it means. But it's like, but what I mean, where are we taking these definitions from if not from humankind? It's a lived human experience, so we have to take into account what other people say about it. So
Yeah.
I think that's very important.
So just kind of find out what the rank and file average person, how they're defining empathy and kind of be able to capture that.
Yeah, I think that's important. So if we could have that as part of like an intake survey, like are you thinking of maybe housing this online,
Housing what online?
housing this training? Would it be like a,
Oh,
there are modules that are recorded and they go
mm-hmm.
through it on their own?
We've done that with our facilitator training. I don't know if you ever saw the best. Let me just see if this is. So I'll just show you this as an example. So this was our training, and you can see we actually have like all the past trainings. Like you just go through each of the trainings, and there's actually recordings. The first trainings I had recorded a lot of them. So we've got a whole bunch. These are all the different cohorts we had, like so something like that. You can go into the individual ones, and there's some video. I'm not sure where the videos are right now. Sessions. I think here's the session. So this is like session 1 of the training, and the recording of the. Well, no, there's recordings. There it is. Yeah. So these are all recordings of all the different, just session 1. So it's a good way of again, to build up, a database of knowledge on
Yeah, I
each.
like that. Um, so do you envision this definitions training being something that is done over Zoom, or would it be on demand? Like, would we have a cohort that would go through it and then we put the recordings
I
online
would say
for
a
other people to
cohort
watch?
so that I mean, what do you think? I mean, it's like a cohort that we're actually harvesting,
Yeah.
having discussions. It could be also like empathy. we have sort of a didactic component or an educational component, then an empathy circle where people can talk about it. So kind of experiential. So that's kind of, I don't know. So it's open for,
I mean, I love
it's,
that so much because that's what we've been doing and been discussing, and then we take it into an empathy circle, and then we discuss more, and then we empathy circle it, and we just are kind of in and out of that model. So I like that. I like that approach. So I was just thinking the reason I was asking that question about if it's going to be like modules that you can go at your own pace versus having a cohort go through it is it just changes the way that we design the course.
well, if we have a cohort going through, we'll be refining it. And
Mhm.
then it would be nice to have something that people can just watch on their own too, eventually. Um, but I think for learning and growing and refining, the cohort method is a good way
Yeah, and I would
to
imagine
learn.
for the first couple of rounds at least, you would be recruiting from your community of people who have been through empathy circle trainings, things like that. Does that seem
Yeah,
right
I
to
mean,
you?
that'd be a good start. Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. I want to write some things down.
I
How
just thought if
long?
you're interested, that could be a project. I'm going to keep the part I'm working on the presentation can be part of the training, or here's, a 20-minute presentation, then there can be, feedback, so forth, and then maybe an empathy circle to discuss, or, kind of open to the framework, whatever. But,
Yeah. How long would you foresee this whole training being? Would this
oh,
be
what
like
do you think? I mean, I'm
a
kind of open.
2 hour training?
Two
Let's
hour. I like 2 hours. Well, that's 2 hours is a session, right? So I can see from, going into the affective cognitive empathy, there's a lot to it, to break all that down
right.
and to explain it. So, for kind of a heavier duty, I could see like 2 hours, 4 sessions or something like that. That's what our current training is. It's 4 weeks.
Okay. And I'm looking at it from the end user perspective also. Why would somebody, and this is not an attack question at all. Like I'm just trying to
No,
dig
this
into this, like
absolutely, I get it.
trying to peel the onion, like so that in terms of the way that we approach it, in terms of the design and in terms of the marketing, what do they stand to gain from it? Because we are obsessed with this topic
hmm
and we want to understand the definitions. Why does it matter to them to understand the definitions?
Mhm.
Well, for me, it's empathy. For me, is it's sort of core to a whole way of being, sort of a whole political social movement, a counter to authoritarian. So if we have authoritarian on one side and empathic, where people are listening and talking to each other and making decisions together, it's very political in that sense. It sort of depends on what kind of a culture we want to live in, and that if you want to be on that side, that you've got to be well informed and prepared to to support that. And seeing it as I see a sort of cultural transformation. Make the United States they mutual empathy is core to being American, and it's a social political system that we want.
Yeah,
And
I think that's
democracy is based on that, right? Democracy is like the belief that people can listen to each other and solve problems and come up with decisions together. So yeah, anyway, you're saying.
yeah. So, how do you see this differing from the empathy circle facilitator training?
Well, this facilitator training is sort of the nuts and bolts of how to do the facilitated empathy circle, and this is a bit more of the philosophical understanding. Sort of the grounding yourself in the philosophical, theoretical, and experiential. So to be able to, because I've just having this definition is what I'm able to talk with kind of the critics of empathy with,
Yeah.
it's like
Mhm.
they're critical and, and I can say, well, this is what I'm meaning by empathy. This is where what you're saying fits into it. And like that example of Kevin Waltman, who is critical of empathy, radical empathy. I found turned him around, say, oh, well, empathy and like this could be okay, and I'm going to try an empathy circle. So,
And would the outcome of this be that perhaps people who take this training can engage more effectively with people who are calling out against empathy?
that too, yeah. I
So
think it
it's
could
not
also be a
just,
groundwork for just your relationship in your family, so you're able to, just have more empathy within your family. So I guess that's the thing. Any thoughts, Daniel? How do we market an empathy definition training to? I mean, we need to inspire people to want to take this training.
right.
Well, this is a new thought for me that this becomes a trend in of itself, and I would think that um, in thinking about building a culture of empathy, that this would be sort of a follow-up for those who come in through the cafes and the various online empathy circles. And, I think I would be probably one of these people. I don't know exactly how to word it, but somehow like get better rooted in empathy, like deepen your understanding of it, you feel for it, become strong in empathy, something like in that direction. You have the practice now. Now you can add to the empathy circle practice, you can add components like self-empathy, and you can get informed about the different shades and aspects of empathy. And I think there's a percentage of people amongst the people that we attract that will be attracted to that. Not everyone, but some people are definitely gonna flock to that because they want to, essentially to become stronger. If you feel like you
That's
want
a
to
good
live
word. I
more
like that.
if you want to live the empathic way, how can you strengthen yourself, in that
I mean, I
direction?
can see this being something that people who are in helping professions would be
Yes.
drawn to if we can market it in a way that helps them to do their job better. That seems like there's an immediate benefit that they can see from it. Sorry, Daniel, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, no, it just triggered something because I think to some degree the image, maybe it's just because of the later campaigns, but I think even if I think about how I understood empathy like even just a few years ago, maybe I also was more in the camp of, oh yeah, so you have to feel sorrow for others, that's like I think the cultural misunderstanding. And when you said helping professions, I think they struggle with that. They want to be empathetic, but they also don't want to be drained, and to clear up for them what empathy really means, would show them that you don't drain yourself with empathy. In fact, you strengthen yourself if you can relate to others, even others in great need and sorrow. If you know what empathy really is, then you can be fully empathetic with them without losing your energy or your mind.
Yeah, I think that's one of the blocks sometimes is people think that that's not possible.
Right, right,
And so when we say things like, come and learn more about empathy, I can see some people being turned off by it because it's like, well,
right.
that sounds like a lot of work, or
Hmm.
that sounds like that's not going to be that much fun. And so
Hmm.
it's just a matter of tapping into what people want to get out of something like this. Do you mind if I share my screen with you?
Oh, yeah. Let me give you a host. Okay, there you go.
Okay. So this is part of a training program that I've been through. I think I've told you some about it. It's a training program for people who are doing like consulting and creating these kinds of workshops and stuff. Hang on, I'm having a hard time getting my cursor to go over to the page. There we go. So you have to not only define who you're marketing to, but you also have to identify these things. So what are they afraid of? What do they get angry about? What do they believe that's holding them back? Do they blame anyone? So we can see, like, as we're talking about the benefits of empathy, these are going to be things that we have to also address. Like, what about just in general, like what are the things that they're afraid of? So you were talking about, relationships, family, politics. They're afraid of maybe losing relationships, right? Like that, I think that's a big part of it. So people get angry. I mean, this one might be an easy one to answer. People get really angry about people misunderstanding them, right? Like if we get into the politics side of it, people are just really angry about politics, right? And so that's something we could lean into as well. So anyway, this would be something if we want to work our way through this. I think this could be really helpful for us once we get to the stage of. I actually think we should do it early on so that as we're creating it with all of these things in mind, right? So it's not just we're creating a product and then figuring out how to market it to people using these questions, but we're actually creating the product to address these needs from the
So you want to get really clear on the needs, so we're designing for the needs.
Yeah. Anyway, because if we don't, I mean, you've talked about this, it's product or person-centered design, right? And that is empathy. We have to get inside the mind of the person that we are theoretically going to be presenting this to. And so something that I think could be helpful is to even interview people. If we think, okay, this is a type of person that we might want to market to, we bring them on a call and we ask them to go through and answer these questions. So if we could get like 5 people, and I don't know, we would have to figure out who do we target. Would it be people within, who have come to the cafes? Would it be people who have already taken the facilitator training? Would it be people who are just in general in helping professions? Would it be people in the political space? Who would it be that we would want to bring in for these? And then would we ask them these questions, or would we just do it as like a thought experiment with us to kind of try to do some imaginative empathy to get inside their minds? So what are your thoughts about that?
Good to do a human-centered design type approach in terms, I've done a bunch of that.
Yeah, you were in Silicon Valley before, right?
Yeah, I didn't learn it there, how it used to be. Yeah,
okay.
But I did learn it later. It did a bunch of groups with human-centered design. I'm familiar with the practice.
So do you think that would be beneficial for this project?
It doesn't, yeah, I'm not quite sure. If doing a whole design project, I don't know, it might be kind of time consuming.
Yeah, that's true. And so we could be better off just answering the questions based on our collective understanding of conversations we've had with lots of people already.
Yeah.
Between the 3 of us,
it's interesting what comes up for me. You talk about people in helping positions. The funny thing is, what I'm experiencing right now, I see them having a lot of empathy with the old people that I serve with my music, right? They're very empathetic. Their problem is that they can't be too empathetic because they don't have the staff to handle that. And right now, in the bigger organization I'm working in, they are on the stingy path to cutting cost wherever they can. And so the people who are actually in the field with the old people have to work with less resources. and it makes them, I mean, they're worn out and they have a very simple challenge to come up with the energy to be empathetic with the people. It's like too much. It's everything is too much. So this is not, I wouldn't know. I mean, I could think about it in this way and say, hey, if we teach you the right way of empathy, then it's not so draining. You may think it's draining. You know, that could be an understanding that I could really use. You know, how can I do this job, being empathetic to people without getting drained every time?
Yeah, I think that's huge. And I've interviewed a lot of people who are in helping professions, and that's the main theme that comes out of it, is that it is very, very draining. And they have coping mechanisms in place where they're able to, some of them have been able to, set up little rituals for themselves to get back out of that mode of, taking everything on themselves while they're on the job. And then on the way home, they'll like listen to loud music or they'll listen to a podcast or something, and it gets them back out of that state. And then they can go home and empathize with their families as well. But it's a real challenge for a lot of people. And so in terms of fears, I think that could be a big one. Is that if we are, first of all, I mean, I think we're maybe even getting ahead of ourselves because we haven't even defined who the people are, right?
Yeah, right.
We're open to sharing this with everybody, but I think it's helpful to think of a specific demographic first and then be able to get into what are their biggest fears. A low-hanging fruit would be people who are in helping professions.
The thing is that's talking a bit of the benefits of empathy and how to do empathy. This is, we're talking about the definition of empathy, right? It's like, because, and for me, it's a lot because of the confusion out there, especially, politically, the political right is pretty much attacking empathy. There's the sin of empathy, there's toxic empathy, and then there's suicidal empathy. So that's three books from the political right criticizing empathy, as well as out of academia. There's the Against Empathy book. And I would say, so, and I see that the criticisms are from a lack of clarity. I think that the phenomenon those books criticized are actually our phenomenon that are problematic, right? But they're not criticizing empathy; they're criticizing the lack of empathy, as I would be defining it. And so it's somehow, in a political sense, it's the people who want to address that problem. There's the issue of the benefits of empathy and all that. It's a little bit different of creating that sense of clarity to be able to address all those criticisms, and also the mess from academia. It's like, as I've been going into the cognitive affective empathy, it's like most of the stuff they're talking about, I wouldn't even call empathy, or it's
conflated. I mean, it's a lot of different constructs that are being conflated into this one thing that they're calling empathy, but they're different things.
So it's going to be, this part might be a bit narrower interest. It's going to be people who want to take I don't know, what is it that want to, I don't know what, I'm just trying to tap into who is, I mean, I'm interested. You're interested, we're kind of interested. We see the importance.
Well, Edmund, and remember, this was your idea. So I'm trying to tap in, what is it like?
Okay.
Who are the people that you're targeting with this? Like, who do you want to come to this?
Right.
And so, like, I'm offering ideas, but
okay.
At the end of the day, it needs to be what you want it to be.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm really trying to tap into who would be interested, in this. I mean, if we see in the, in the New York Times, they're writing about empathy, and there's counter. They're saying, no, these people are wrong, right? So there's a whole cultural discussion going on around what is empathy, and
But who are those people that are engaging in those conversations?
Yeah,
like,
who would
people we want to target?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not good at I mean, everybody kind of wants to have a clear definition, but they don't want to maybe go into a deep, 4-week course, right? I mean, everybody's like, hey, give me the simple, thumbnail this definition. And what we're going
Right.
is we're going to the nth degree to really give the deep philosophical, experiential definition, create that clarity. So,
Well,
yeah.
and that's
So,
why I wonder if, I mean, who wants to sign up for 8 hours of training?
mhm,
Who are these people? I would,
mhm.
I would sign up for it because it's something that matters to me. But
Hmm.
we're a bit bizarre by,
Yeah.
we're not the normal
Mhm.
No.
rest of the human race, right? We want to have clear definitions. Just in general, I think people do want to have clarity, but it's not something that they think about that much. So they're thinking more about, well, why does this matter to me?
If
What
you're an
benefit?
empathy activist, you're going to want, to be clear.
Yeah. So I mean, are we targeting empathy advocates?
Yeah, Daniel, it looks like you're about to say something.
Yeah. I mean, for me, one of the things that happens here with the onslaught on the word of empathy is just the usual thing, what the right always does. It takes down any good word, any good, like they're using entitlement, entitled people. Well, you are the entitled people. You twist the whole thing around and you mess with our heads and you tell us that Social Security is an entitlement, which is like, don't do that. You're just destroying definitions. And so here you want to do that again. You want to derail our momentum of empathy. You want to make something simple very complicated. And I don't want to really jump on that bandwagon. I don't want to join in an endless discussion from that perspective about the definition of empathy. I want to say, here is what I feel empathy is and why it's important for us. And no matter what you say, you cannot derail me from that. I mean, this is just speaking from my belly,
Mhm.
where I don't want to get too much into this because that's the problem with the mind. The mind can always say, yeah, but. It can
But
always analyze and take it into a different direction, And so in the end, what I associate with empathy is not something in the mind, it's something in my heart.
kind of an experiential.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And what's really interesting to me in the AI discussion, So I'm asking AI, say, do you have an opinion? And it says back, no, I don't have an opinion. Can you form an opinion? No, I cannot form an opinion. So, but how can you say back to me what I say, in an enhanced way? Well, I just, and then it explains to me probability and word and language and everything else. I go like, hey, aren't we saying that empathetic listening is something where you don't mix your opinion in? So AI is the perfect empathetic listener because it doesn't mix anything in from its side, right? So there's something to be learned from that. Anyways, for me, that is the definition that I have settled on is that I relate to you and I receive you fully. And I don't mix anything in from me to my knowledge, right? I mean, to the degree I can. And then I can really feel you and you feel acknowledged. You feel in my presence that I want you here, that no matter how you show up, that I'm not doing this thing, am I allowing you in? Or are you the right kind of person? Ba ba bee, ba ba ba, the whole typical societal thing. I'm not doing it. Anybody who shows up, you included in my empathetic, universal way of living.
Well, I think that's the power of this definition
Right,
approach that we're
right,
taking is we're basing it in that experience of the empathy circle. So we can take it out of just abstract and say, come into the
right.
empathy circle and experience it. And I don't want to criticize the critics of empathy, the critics or whatever, because I think it's just we're just talking past each other. And I just
Right.
find that conservatives or liberals, when they kind of experience what we're actually meaning, that's like, oh, this is pretty good, you know. So
Yeah.
that's the problem, is we're talking past each other, and then we have the definition, and then we can bring people into the circle, an empathy circle, and experience and say, well, this is what you're experiencing here. And like I was saying, in Santa Barbara, we had the candidate for Congress on the Republican side come to the empathy circle, and he said, this is great, I want to do these empathy circles with my liberal friends. So yeah, so that, and it's not like the conservatives are only misunderstanding. I think the academics has gotten too
Mhm.
complicated and not clearly, and it's also on the left. The woke left is also
Yeah,
like they're
totally.
using empathy to take you into becoming a social justice warrior, right?
Yeah.
So it's kind of like on all sides there's this confusion, and if we can have something that's like clear in the middle or whatever, that yeah. So that's, at least that's where I'm coming from. I don't know how, Jody, what you're
I mean, so many things that you've both said have resonated with me with the work that I'm doing right now. I'm working on a paper, and I just want to read this. This is from a textbook called "Political Bias in Psychology." It's something like that. So it's talking about bias and like defining it and trying to understand, like trying to unravel like how we become biased and the implications for that in our research as well. So in the book, it says psychology does not meet the 5 criteria to be considered a rigorous science. So there are 5 criteria for science to be called science. And these are the 5 things. And psychology is really bad at this, is what they're saying. So number 1 is clearly defined terminology. And that's the thing that,
Mm.
as you've been talking about, like there is no clear definition of what the terminology means, and what the lived experience of different humans are as they come into this, whatever we term as empathy, right? Everybody's experience of it is subjective. And so it's impossible to have a clearly defined terminology.
Mhm.
Second is quantifiability. We have to be able to measure it, right? If you can't put it into numbers, then you can't call it science, right? And so that's yet again this whole concept of this experience, this way of being of empathy is not really something you can reduce down to numbers. Number 3 is highly controlled experimental conditions, which is something I'm trying to do with my experiment that I'm trying to see if people can empathize and hold to their deeply held convictions at the same time. And it's really, really difficult to make that a highly controlled experimental environment.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so again, I don't know if what I'm doing is science. Once again, number 4 is reproducibility, and number 5 is predictability and testability. So the things that really stood out from that quote right there for me is we don't have a clear definition within academia of what empathy is. And number 2, we can't reduce it down to something that we can measure. It's not and as much as we want to pretend like psychology is a science, and I know that if we put this on the internet, I'm going to get hate for saying
Nobody watches it, but
I know, I don't even watch it, so it's fine. um, but you have all of your AI companions that are like putting stuff out there too. So who knows? The AI are listening and they're watching us. But the point that I'm getting at here is in academia, especially in psychology, because psychologists are the ones that talk the most about empathy. We are talking past each other as well because of
Yeah.
this problem of so many different definitions. And then coming back to what you were saying about the political left and right, as part of this paper that I'm working on, I'm talking a lot about the moral foundations theory by Jonathan Haidt. And his premise with this theory is that we have what we see as moral. And I'm sorry if this is redundant, Edwin, if I've told you about this before, please just cut me off. But I don't
you
know if
go
I've
for
shared
it.
this with Daniel.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
But on the left, what this is kind of just what the data have shown, right? So this isn't to say that this is every single person's experience, but across the board, what they're finding is the trend that is emerging is that people on the left value harm reduction, so like doing no harm to other people, and I want to make sure I get the term correct on this. Hang on. Moral foundations. Let's see. Oh, bugger, I can't find it. But basically, oh, and fairness. That was the other one. So reducing harm to other people and being fair, right? Do those seem like moral foundations that you can get on board with? Like, I think that we should reduce harm to people. I think we should be fair. But on the other side, on the political right, there are a different set of values that are also important. Number one is authority. So keeping things in line with the way things have been done in the past, having a clear authority figure is something that's important. Number two is in group. So taking care of our own. So that's why you see things like Make America Great Again, because we're taking care of our group. And then number three is purity. So things that are sacred to people. It's important to people on the political right to keep things that are sacred. So that would be things like, that's why there's a problem on the right with people who are in same-sex marriages, because that is seen as impure. And so if you're looking at it from the political left and you're seeing people on the right being really intensely like caught up in these things that you don't see as morally correct, it's because you have a different set of moral values. Mm-hmm. Right. And so you both, on both sides, you both see yourselves as moral, but you have different morals. Right. And so, and actually on the political right, what they found, I'm just going to look this up and show it to you. What they found is on the political right, they actually do also value harm avoidance and fairness, but just less than they do the other things. And so what's interesting about it, I'm going to pull it up. Moral foundations theory. It's really interesting to look at this because I think this is going to help us to understand why we're talking past each other a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to just find this graph and show it to you. If you don't mind.
You're familiar with the value system development model, spiral dynamics?
Tell me about that one, because I think I need to learn more about it, because I am trying to understand more about different models of what people say about values. Say it again.
It's ended up the main people are Clare Graves was the first professor for psychology who came up with the first model, which is basically that adults have a developmental value system, and it's and globally, historically, it goes from archaic to tribal to feudalistic to nation state to modernity, traditional systems, modern systems, postmodern systems, and so on. And I'm bringing it up because I got trained in it, because I got fascinated, because exactly of the same reason. If you have people from various different value systems talking to each other, they cannot hear each other because their gravitational value system is situated differently. And so it doesn't, they can't even use the same words, but they're going to talk across each other,
Well, I think a perfect example of this would be somebody says, well, God told me to do it. Somebody who doesn't believe in God, this means nothing to me. This is not something that I can even understand, because I've never experienced that before. I don't believe that that's true. So it is meaningless. And so that comes into play with, can you see this graph here?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So harm and fairness on the liberal side. Oops, sorry.
Oh, yeah. Right.
So it's much higher than these other three for liberals, but then it kind of converges over here where these come up on the conservative side and these come down a bit. So I just think that's really interesting. That I really see that as a huge reason for the empathy gap between liberals and conservatives, because we have a different set of values and we don't understand why something would be important to somebody else. because it's just not part of our narrative. It's not part of our personality. It's not part of the story that we've told ourselves about how the world works. And it just doesn't make sense to us. So they can talk and talk and talk at us, but we are blocked because it doesn't fit the narrative that we have. And so Edwin, I know that this is something that we've kind of debated back and forth about. That's part of the reason that I don't think that pure empathy is something we will ever attain, because it's always going to be filtered through all of these different value systems and narratives and histories and all of that. But we can come closer to that form of active listening with each other, where we are trying to understand each other. And where if we were to just say, oh, well, empathy is not possible, so let's just not try, that's definitely not what I'm advocating. I'm just saying that we need to recognize that 100% overlap of those circles, right? Me and you, it's never going to happen, right? We might think that it's happening, but it's still is going to be, I'm on this side of the camera, you're on that side of the camera, right?
Yeah, well, it's a process, so it's an ongoing process. It's kind of like never ending, because there's always something new arising that needs to be sort of negotiated and mediated.
Yeah,
in
I
that
think
chart,
that's the beauty.
I don't see empathy. I would say that empathy is maybe on both the liberal and the conservative, and that the empathy is the negotiation space of the different values. And
Yeah,
we've
so
done
that's
we've done empathy circles with pro-life, pro-choice, right? And you have a couple hours where they're talking and they're sharing these stories, from both sides, and you can really understand why people are making the choices they have, right? You just sort of unravel the onion, so to speak, but it's having the space for that dialogue, and that's what the empathy is, and then you start seeing the deeper humanity of each person, and you don't see them as
and
an enemy.
I think that's the key right there. So I have a friend who's a mediator, and she does trainings where she helps people peel the onion, peel away all of the different layers of all of the things that are making it so we're disagreeing and not seeing each other, and we whittle it down to what are our shared values, what are the things that make us similar. And for some people, it's just the fact that I'm a human and you're a human. Like, everything else is different, right? I cannot understand anything else about you but the fact that you are a human just like me. And that is still something that we share at the core of ourselves, even if everything else is different. And I think that that's an important part of this, is just trying. We have to keep trying to get past those external layers of the onion to get down to those shared values.
Well, so this gives me lead-in to make a case that the empathy circle is practicing a form of empathy that we are trying to, in our thinking about it, we're trying to define what it is, but it uses a living way of empathetically connecting to each other. And that is a form of, it's got to be a form of universal empathy. It is a very big form of tent that you unfold here with the empathy circle practice. And I want to emphasize the practice, because even in our instructions, we don't talk much about empathy. We just talk about what we're going to do, which is we'll listen to each other and we'll repeat and we're going back and forth, and it's all practical. It's living. And it gives a chance for people then to walk out of the empathy circle and maybe go, that felt really good. So that's empathy, for them to even ponder that, right? Now, why is that so important? I want to share one thing here with you. Can I? Here. Are you seeing this? Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
no, you have all kinds of windows. Yeah, okay, let me
that's what you were talking about, right?
Right, this is what I'm talking about, right?
Wow, this is intense.
Yeah, this is I'll send it to you. I can put it into the chat. I don't know if you can see the whole thing. The bar seems to be in front of it. Oh, yeah, here. Okay. So it starts at base. It goes through the whole human developmental system. And if you want to learn more about this, there's an endless amount of resources available because this has been around for a while. Now, what we say and what I say is like we're in this moment, we're in the yellow moment. And even the first one who discovered this value system development in humanity, which was Clare Graves, he said the step from green to yellow is a chasm, it's like a new octave, as if the whole thing repeats itself, but now on a collective level. I don't want to get too much lost in it. I just want to say what you see here, systemic, integrative, I learn. So before it was like we become, I improve, we are saved, I control, we are safe, or I survive, right? Those things. But now we're in this I learn. And what it means to me is that I can go to the greens, the orange, the blues, the reds, the purples, all of them, and I can listen to all of them because I am a yellow. So my value system in the language of empathy, my form of empathy is so big that I can hear green, orange, blue, red, purple. I can hear them all. While if I go to a green are the postmodern fanatics who know everything's better. You cannot, they're very hard to deal with, even though they are very, very sweet people and everything. But they're oftentimes they use things like spiritual bypassing to get their stuff across, right? Because they just are right, you know, like things like that. So I'm just saying, for me, what's important here is the idea that our form of empathy can listen to everybody, right? And that
Whatever the value systems people have, that you're willing to
whatever
listen
they
to
are,
what that
even
is.
people, yeah, or even people who say, "Oh, I'm an empath and I get polluted by others all the time." I don't have to correct them and say that's not the right form of empathy. No, as you always say, Antwin, I say, "Oh, you feel you're an empath and you get polluted by other people and you give empathy for that." It doesn't. I don't. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like I have the biggest enough tent, and that's the attitude for, like we say, the yellows are stitching the spiral back together that has been fallen apart through conflicted value systems.
And then the next one was we experience.
Yeah, the next one would be an integrated. The purple, the next level is where people who are very much like Ken Wilber, integral philosophy. They have the whole system also as one of the stage development of humanity. Um, um, Ken Wilber, you gotta know about Ken Wilber, and so don't want to get too my
Yeah, I
mind
don't want to go too
my
far
own
down
mind.
spiral dynamics. I'm familiar with the practice with it, but
Yeah. So
I'm interested in the empathy relationship. And what you're saying is that whatever people's level of development is, if you're empathic, that you can listen to everyone. And I think that's
right,
kind
I
of
really
the
like
and
that.
specifically
core
if you
message.
have holistic empathy,
Yeah.
if you have and the beauty is I can learn holistic empathy by just doing empathy circles.
hmm You don't even have to have the concepts. You just do the
No, you
practice.
don't have to. And that is beautiful. That is powerful. This is where we have the bridge from academia into practice. In fact,
Yeah,
we start with practice and we follow up with academia.
I know. And that's why I keep, I mean, part of me is just like, gosh, I'm too busy in academia. I don't have time for this. But then you keep reeling me back in with your practical applications.
That's good. That's awesome.
No, it's
Thank you
very good. No, you're keeping me
for
grounded in reality.
Well, that's I've been I can maybe uh show you this. The what 1 second here. because this is what I've been working. Well, we got the different. I just wanted to be sure we had some projects in the work. Like if you want to be just thinking about, the training, a framework. I think just so we have that on the table to keep, plugging away. And the other is this uh, looking at talking about academia, right? It's okay. Comparing other models now, right? So we got the most common model is the cognitive affective or empathic concern model, and that's what, if you're talking about academia, that's what they're going to be uh, bringing up. And a couple of problems, just, and you could think, we could like to have a list of these. If you have any sort of inputs on this, like, some problems with this model is it creates the feeling versus reason polarity. Did you see that video by Dan Zahavi, Jody? You see?
Part of it, I didn't have time to watch the whole thing.
Okay, because he's coming from the phenomenologist, point of view, which I think it doesn't really have this, polarity.
Mhm.
And anyway, it's, dry, boring, individualistic instead of a relational view, and just has a lot of inherent contradictions. And for
False
the
dichotomies too,
false dichotomies,
where it's like it's either cognitive or
oh, right.
affective.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's not how it really works in reality.
Yeah. And then the cognitive empathy, it seems to be these are the parts that one is, I just see they talk about understanding, knowing another person's internal state, including thoughts and feelings. That's Dan Batson. There's imagining and perspective taking, and then there might be some other categories if you can think of any other categories. But it's, at least this is how they're commonly defining it without necessarily sharing or experiencing these emotions yourself. And I go through and just say that, basic empathy creates understanding. So trying to map it onto the holistic empathy model. And, so an example, if the person is feeling depression, you sense into, you might sense their depression, and you create a map of understanding of why they have depression, what they're doing about it. You create sort of a map of understanding of who they are. And then,
By the way, I'm gonna have to go in like 3 minutes. I'm
oh,
sorry.
okay, then I'll just,
Yeah, but keep
so
going.
anyway, it's just thinking about the cognitive empathy, these terms, and then I'll go through, and then the affective model of empathy and the affective seems to be broken down into two parts: emotion sharing and then an emotional reaction. Emotional sharing is state matching, emotional contagion, union or fusion versus emotional reaction is personal distress, feeling sympathy, any concern, any reaction, joy, fear, sorrow is kind of thrown under that. So just a quick kind of, that's where I'm trying to flesh that out to start comparing the cognitive affective model to the holistic empathy
Mhm.
model, and how do they match, and pretty much just saying that the reaction part isn't really empathy. You start with empathy, but then you go into a reaction. You're no longer necessarily in an empathic, state. So I don't know how that resonates, but
It becomes about you again and the
yeah.
way that you're feeling about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I want to add to it. There is even this component when I read about it. Last week I read around that this feeling into another person, right? That is to me imprecise in that context, because it opens the door to, like, now I have to do something, and that becomes about me again. Am I doing this right? Am I feeling into you the right way? Can you show me how to feel into some other person? Well, that complicates it again. If there's a practice of empathy that's really helpful in our community, in our world, then We have to uncomplicate it. It's like that's anxiety inducing even in me. I have to learn how to feel into you. What does that mean?
What does that mean?
It,
Yeah.
in the empathy circle, it's more like the first couple rounds, people are anxious. Am I doing it right? And they go into the
Yeah,
third or fourth round, and they start that anxiety kind of leaves. And then once they're going into more circles, that anxiety. So that's just being human, kind of doing a new
right.
activity. And the things could be, I try to explain to people, you might feel a little bit anxious, are you doing it right? And so forth. And that kind of can help
Yeah, right.
with it. So
Yeah, yeah.
there's
No,
not
but
much you
that
can do, too much you can do about that.
I came to the conclusion that even if you um, say back, what's the word you're using? When you
Parroting,
don't, what?
parroting.
Parroting, right? Even that requires an incredible amount of listening. Even and an ability to understand and comprehend what the other person is saying. And that means the whole person is listening, even if you don't do anything else than just repeating to another person. That is a gigantic empathetic act. And I think it muddles the waters when you say only when you really feel into another person and you develop that skill, then you are empathetic. That's again just no, you're messing with the simplicity and the beauty of empathy.
You have to
Empathy is
put
just,
words to it. I use the word sensing into, so
yeah,
you have
well,
to
I
say
like
something.
listening.
What else? What are we going to say? How are we going to describe it? We got to use words to
Listening.
describe it.
I'm listening.
So you want to use the word listening to someone instead of
Yeah,
sensing into.
empathy is really listening to somebody. Well,
Yeah.
is that not good enough?
I agree with this pushback as well. That I mean, just in general, it's become so overcomplicated. I know Edwin, you've mentioned this as well, that we're taking any of the beauty out of what the experience of empathy is by overcomplicating it with all of the
Mhm.
academic definitions. And I find myself sometimes getting paralyzed by like, oh no, am I reacting? Is this a empathic distress that I'm feeling right now, as opposed to actually being proactively concerned for their welfare. Like I
Yeah.
find myself over analyzing my own empathic experience
Mhm.
because of all of this academic
Mhm.
understanding of it. And then when I just get into the flow of actually doing it, I connect with people. And
Right.
I let go of all of it and I just get into the process of connection.
Right.
So that's a I don't know, we're gonna have to address that because it's a very real thing. Because the more you get into the philosophy, the more
Yeah.
the more you get confused.
Yeah. Then also there's an attached to sort of like I don't know what to call that. Like I heard somebody say, well, an empathy circle is not going to do anything for me. Just simply saying back to me what I feel, this is not going to help. I need somebody who is really equipped with a lot more than that. What? So it diminishes the act of really somebody listening to you to this parroting thing that doesn't do anything. And that is, yeah, I don't know. For some reason, it just doesn't sit right with me.
Well, it's going to be people's criticism. You just empathize with their criticism. Like, hey,
Yeah,
you're really
yeah,
struggling with this. This doesn't seem like real empathy to you. So you kind of just model the empathy to them.
right, right. No, but
And they have
I'm
free
what I'm
speech. You want to hear people what they have to say. Yeah,
right.
interested
Yeah,
in
yeah. No,
where
no.
they're
I mean
coming from.
that's fine. It was from a person who says I'm not coming to the empathy circle because that's just too simple for me. It doesn't help me right now, And I said, okay, yes, fine, But what it came with is this connotation that it's not qualified enough, not, and I just that irks me.
Yeah, I know. I hear that too from people. Like from the nonviolent communication people,
Yeah,
a lot of times it's maybe they're unless. unless somebody's guessing their needs, they don't feel satisfied. So I don't know
Right.
if that was the situation, but I see that a lot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's the same direction. The Center for Nonviolent Communication apparently has been taken over by a woke crowd, and they are now, like, oh, this we have to insist it has to look a certain way. Unless you don't do this, this is not empathetic. Oh, that destroys empathy in my mind. That makes me retract and say, no, I don't want to do that. It's too complicated for me.
You
Yeah, I
can
think.
just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I've got to hop off now, but I just wanted to end one last thought. I think that as we get into nailing down a shared definition of empathy, that I wonder if we might run into that. If we say this is what empathy is, then will that turn people off? Like you're saying with the people who are taking over
Right.
this nonviolent communication. If there's only one way to do it, then we're diminishing what empathy looks like for other people.
Well, there was Dan Batson. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He did a lot of the research, and he said there's all these definitions. You have to be clear on how you're defining it and stick to it. So it's like this is how we're defining it, and
Yeah.
we're
And I
sticking
think
to it. And we,
as long as we're clear about that this is our definition, and we
right.
recognize that other people have different definitions that have some positive and negative components to what empathy is, but we're seeing positive coming from this definition of empathy.
Yeah.
And moreover from the practice.
What?
We're doing it. We're not
Yeah.
we're not sitting here talking about it and defining. We're practicing empathy
Yeah.
in that way. And
Yeah.
because the practice works, we don't even have to explain to people a whole lot what it means or how the definition. The practice will teach them.
Well, I do see the need for kind of clear explanation
Sure.
and the
Yeah.
practice, to have clear
Right.
explanation and the
Yeah, I
practice,
agree
I
with
think is
that.
very powerful.
Me too. Yes.
Especially in response to people who say that empathy is bad. And so then when there's the name empathy circle, there are going to be people who are immediately turned off by that because in their view, the definition of empathy is something different than the way we define it. And so I think that is very important to get out there. What is this clear definition for how we are experiencing this?
And why maybe what you're saying is outside of how we're defining it, if there's talking about emotional contagion or other things. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that being really important. Okay, so let's keep plugging away. Do you want to give me an assignment as to like a specific thing you want me to work on this
Do
week?
you want to start creating an outline of a course maybe? And I'll keep working on the maybe I could present next week on what I've done so far with the presentation. So it's going into starting to address the cognitive affective model and how the holistic model sort of maps onto it. So we're taking on the academics next, the academic definition.
I'm never going to get my PhD at this rate.
Well, you're going to have, at least hopefully you'll have a good definition of what you're talking about.
They're going to, if they hear me taking on the academics, they're not going to give me a PhD. And plus, it's going to take me 6 years to finish my PhD program with all of these side projects that I'm taking on. But also with that, just to wrap up, next week, I won't be able to work on this next week and a half.
Okay.
Because I have huge papers to finish up this week. And then next week, my husband's going out of town and I've still got the kids. And so actually, probably in the next 2 weeks, I won't have time to work on this. But then after that, things are going to calm down a bit. I say that in quotations marks, because I've still got 5 kids at home during the summer. So we'll see how it goes. But yes, this matters to me. And so I do want to make it happen as well. Just recognizing we're all busy. So we all have to be okay with maybe timelines shifting.
Yeah, I see it kind of just getting a little ball rolling here, and it kind of goes into perpetuity, to just, it's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I like it.
Continuous improvement.
I like it a lot.
Continuous design.
And as we're thinking through how we want to design a course, let's definitely keep in mind who our audience is and like really trying to understand their fears, their angers, all of the things that go into making up what might keep them from seeing the benefit of what we're sharing. Yeah, so we'll talk more about it next
Okay,
week.
yeah.
Next week, you'll share your presentation. We'll record that.
Hmm.
And then the week after, we can start talking about an outline. Does that sound good?
Okay, excellent. Yeah. And
Okay.
if you have anything on Daniel that you like to kind of work on, you can let us know.
If you have any ideas for me, send them my way.
Okay.
I have a bunch of things to fulfill, and I'll keep you posted.
Well, one thing I would like to at some point read your book. That sounds like the exact kind of thing I'm interested in. Sounds fascinating.
Very good. Very
Alrighty.
good. We'll stay in touch.
Yeah, I'll see you next
week.
week. Bye.
Okay, bye.